This is the Pick Six Podcast, and this is Sunday Night Super Friends. That's Will Brinson, that handsome devil in the red shirt, repping the Natties, John Breech. I'm Ryan Wilson. This is Sunday Night Super Friends Week 9 NFL Recap 2023 edition. All right, so here's the plan in case you're new here, or in case you have a short-term memory. We're going to hit our top 10 takeaways from Week 9. The Wild finishes in the division, in the conference, even inter-conference. Breech Sunday had it all. The improbable comebacks from both a rookie quarterback and a journeyman who's been with this new team for 5 days. What? Even an improbable field goal from a running back? This is Breech's Sunday. First things first, though, remember, give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on the old YouTubes at NFL and CBS. And, of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcast so you don't miss a show. All right, let's get to it, boys. First up, let's head to the NFC East. Dak Prescott came into the link having won 3 straight against the Eagles, scoring 40-plus points each time, and he was 7-1 in his last 8 starts against Philly, which is sort of hard to believe. And on Sunday, Cowboys outgained the Eagles 163-14 in the fourth quarter, but found a way to Cowboys it up late. They had 3 scoreless drives in the fourth quarter that ended inside the Phillies' 30-yard line. So it's hard to say when you vocalize it, including the game's final play, a 3rd and 26 from the Philly 27 that gained exactly 23 yards as time expired. A touchdown there, and the Cowboys win. Instead, the Eagles hold on, eke out the 28-23 victory, and move to 8-1. Now they have a 2.5 game lead on Dallas in the division. Brinson, overall, I felt pretty good about the Cowboys' effort and feel differently than I have in previous iterations of this team. But where are you in this loss that probably should have been a win for old Jerry's Cowboys team?
You know, when Stephen A. Smith does a thing where he puts on a Cowboys hat or a cowboy hat and he prances around and he laughs and cackles about how the Cowboys lost. And you can tell that he's really enjoying when, it's like entirely stupidity based that the Cowboys fall to the Eagles or to really anyone. Sort of felt like this might be one of those games, right? Where Stephen A. Smith is going to soak up the ending of it, because the Cowboys, it did feel like the Cowboys should have won, or at least should have covered, or, should have been right there at the end of the game. I mean, they had a chance, obviously. They threw, but it was kind of summed up by that final play, right? It is unnecessarily far, 3rd and 26, and they threw just short of the end zone. And it felt like especially at the end there, sort of the final drive, when they didn't, the Dak, they don't spike the ball. They don't realize what's going on. They don't have any timeouts left. So Dak has to just run a play and throws it deep left and out of the end zone. And then you have 5 seconds left because you got sacked, I believe. It sort of felt like a lot like a Mike McCarthy moment in the playoffs. And I think that's maybe my biggest concern, not necessarily with Dak Prescott, who I thought looked very good in this game.
To me, it feels like the Cowboys are the NFC's version of the Chargers in the sense that they just find the craziest ways to lose that just blow your mind. And I don't think we think about them all the time because you have weirdo teams like the Chargers or the Falcons, like the Lions used to be, that just always found these weird ways to lose. But when you look at the Cowboys, this team, they had a 1st and goal at Philadelphia's 6-yard line with 27 seconds left. You have to go 6 yards and you win this game. And you have 27 seconds. You literally do anything you want. You have time to run 4 plays. And somehow they take 1st and goal at the 6-yard line. And they're running a play, 3rd and goal from the 27-yard line is their last play. How do you manage to do that? I mean, we know how to manage to do that because we watched it all, because there was a false start. Dak got sacked, as Brinson mentioned, and they got called for, I think, a delay of game. Game. Like, what is going on? What are you doing? It is unbelievable. And so I feel like this happens to the Cowboys a lot in big situations, which makes Breech Bot sad because I always think they're going to put all this behind them. They're finally going to get past this moment, and then they never do. Games like this happen, and they just choke in the biggest moments against good teams. This doesn't happen against bad teams. It's only against good teams. And so, I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, does it get more frustrating than this? I don't think it does.
They did beat the Chargers, Breech, just so we're clear, by 3 points. Now, that is a bad team, as you just alluded to. And look, I get what you're saying. I feel better about where this Cowboys team is now than they have been historically under under Mr. McCarthy. But again, that's a game that you should have won. Now the lead is 2.5 in the division against an Eagles team that continues to have hiccups, but continues to hit their stride as they have hiccups, which is sort of a weird thing to say. They got after it in terms of the pass rush late. You guys talked about some of the sacks there and the pressures. So I don't know. There are no moral victories in the NFL, but I feel like this is still a playoff team. They are 5-3.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't going to win the division, I don't think. I mean, even if they win this game, I still think that the Eagles are the favorite down the stretch, especially as Jalen Hurts gets healthier. But I don't know. I feel better about this team than I do the Chargers team, which was my Super Bowl pick, as it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, the very first year, by the way, that I was at CBS Sports, I picked the Chargers and the Cowboys to meet in the Super Bowl.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right. And Breech, I think you nailed it. It just felt like the ending to one of those San Francisco playoff games in the last 2 years, where it's like a delay of game with 5 seconds left. Like you're trying to run a third and you're trying the specific play is, you're 3rd and 21 on the Philly 22. You have with 5 seconds left. You have one play. You're running one play and you got to get 22 yards into the end zone, score a touchdown, and you get a delay of game. It sums everything up so perfectly. I think if they'd won this game, the division was definitely in the realm of possibility. But Jalen Hurts said almost exactly what you said, Wilson, which was he said, we haven't had a complete game yet, and we just sort of find a way to win. He's like, this group is very resilient, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a lot of truth to that. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts been a little banged up. I mean, they do just keep finding ways to win. Like it feels like they should be 5-3, not 8-1.
The Eagles are 8-1 though. So it's I'm not worried about the Eagles at all. It feels like the Eagles are to win this division, be the first repeat champ in 19 years. And and like you just said, Brinson, Hurts said they're playing somewhat ugly football and they're still winning. And so once they get their A game going, they're going to be almost impossible to beat if they can ever get it going, as long as Hurts is banged up. And even though I compared the Cowboys to the Chargers as far as the way they lose, I would also compare them to the Dolphins, which we'll talk about later. But in the sense,
that's a really good comp for the playoffs.
They can't beat good teams. They played 2 big games, the 49ers and the Eagles, and they lost both of them. And that's it. I think those are the only 2 teams they've played that currently have a winning record. So you beat up on the bad teams. That will get you to the playoffs. But then who knows, what's going to happen in the playoffs because you can't beat good teams.
They all can't be.
Sorry. Let's see the 8, 9, 10 seeds in the NFC: Washington 4-5, Atlanta 4-5, Tampa 3-5. So like Dallas, even with this loss at 5-3, you still feel really, really good about their postseason chances.
I feel good about Dak Prescott too, by the way. So the last 3 times against the Eagles, which is sort of crazy, they've scored at least 40 points in those games. Bonkers, number 1. 3-0 in those games coming into Sunday's action, also bonkers. Dak Prescott's the only quarterback since 1950 with 75% completion percentage, 3 passing touchdowns in 3 straight games against a single opponent. On Sunday, he only completed 65% of his passes, but did go for 374, 3 touchdowns. Again, no interceptions. CeeDee Lamb continues to do his thing. Got some other players involved finally, which was nice to see in the pass game. On the other side, A.J. Brown continues to do his thing. Devonta Smith got into the end zone finally. I do wonder about some of the injuries. We saw a couple of defensive backs go out late for Philly. I think they both came back, Slay and one other.
Bradbury got hurt late. I don't.
And Bradbury came back as well, I think.
Oh, he did? Okay, yeah.
And the thing is, also, I mean, we're crushing that last drive. But Reed Blankenship made an incredible tackle against Luke Schoonmaker at the 1-inch line. And Breech, you put a picture in our little chat room there that Luke might have got punched in the old family jewels as he went down at the 1-inch line there.
No, before the ball got there, he got punched possibly in the family jewels.
Yeah, but the ball didn't cross. One ball didn't cross the goal line. 2 others may have. It didn't count. So I mean, I get it, but I don't feel bad about this game. Like, I felt terrible about the way the Steelers won on Thursday night because I'm a Steelers homer, like to the point where I had to apologize to Musso for yelling at him. But this game, I was like, no horse in the fight, but I was like, okay, or no dog in the fight. I was like, okay, I get it. This isn't the typical way that it's not like the scramble on 4th and forever in the playoffs, as you talk about the playoff losses, Brinson, against the 49ers a few years ago with Dak. This felt different.
Yeah, and but it does. I mean, it feels like this game just sort of sums up both teams, like how they've played or how they've sort of won or lost games so far this season, right? Like the Eagles improbably are 8-1, but they are, and they just find ways to keep winning. And it's like the Cowboys are improbably 5-3, but they are, and they like lose to the Cardinals. And they've been such a different team on the home in terms of the home and road splits. I was kind of funny too, by the way, at the end where it's like the Eagles got the ball back. It came if it was a fumble recovery, but however they got the ball back and the fans started chanting, "Cowboys suck. Cowboys suck." And then all of a sudden, like the Eagles committed a bunch of penalties and the Cowboys had the ball like right back in position to like steal the victory.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift took the handoff, ran into A.J. Brown, fumbled it. They were lucky to get that recovery late. So it was a whole circus of calamities for me to make up a phrase. All right, Breech, it's that time. Producer Harry informs me that we're on to Cincinnati.
I love being on to Cincinnati. Look, you know what is fun about watching the Bengals? Is that
Hold on, I gotta read this. I wrote the whole thing. I gotta set you up.
Okay.
The Bengals are now, the Bills are now 1-4 in games not played in Buffalo and or London this year. That's crazy. They lost to the Jets, Jags, Pats, and now the Bengals. And it's fair to wonder who that team is. But we're not here to bury the Bills, Breech. We're here to praise the Bengals. And by the way, Joseph Lee Burrow, 3-1 against Patrick Mahomes' lifetime. Now 2-0 against Josh Allen. He is the anti-Cowboys. So, Breech, I got two questions for you that I scribbled down. Where was your head? I'll read them both, and then you can answer them at your leisure. Number one, where was your head when before half we saw Burrow on the sideline with a bloody index finger on his throwing hand and a wrap on the old calf muscle? And two, I'm going to say it. I think this is a Super Bowl team. Are you with me, sir?
I am 1,000% with you. The fingernail didn't bother me right before halftime, but seeing the little leg wrap on the calf, I will admit that gave me a slight pause because the last thing anyone wants, that is the one thing that could derail this season right now, is Burrow aggravating or re-injuring that calf. I mean, that's what every Bengals fan is afraid of. Anytime he gets sacked, anytime he gets hit, anytime he gets knocked down, you're thinking, please don't let the calf be injured. Get up, Burrow. Hurry up and get up. There was one scramble where he got hit really hard, stayed on the ground, and I thought he was hurt, and then he stuck both fingers forward and was like first down. But like
Chris Collinsworth even remarked, he goes, every time Mikey stinks off like runs like that, Bengals fans freak out. Like when I heard that, all I could picture was like Breech being like, no.
Well, and he does the dramatic pause. He literally waited like 2 seconds before using. You're like, is he conscious? What is happening? Give me something. But I will say that I think the Bengals are a bad matchup for the Bills. I think that if you ask the Bills if they would rather play if you ask the Bills if they would rather play the Bengals or the Chiefs in the playoffs, I think they might actually pick the Chiefs. And because it is, NFL's a lot about matchups. Like I think the Bengals would rather play the Chiefs over the Ravens. I think the Ravens are a more difficult matchup for the Bengals. That doesn't mean that one team's better than the other. It just means it's a more difficult matchup. And I felt like this game played out like the playoff game last year where the Bengals offense just came out with their pants on fire, scored a couple touchdowns real quick, and then it just felt like Buffalo was never going to be able to claw their way back into it. I mean, Joe Burrow couldn't miss on those first two drives, and then obviously they kind of slowed down in the second half. But the thing is, you look at what the Bengals have done. They've got to win over the 49ers. They've got to win over the Seahawks. They've got to win now over the Bills. Wilson, you mentioned, they're kind of the anti-Cowboys. They can beat good teams. They do it. They've been doing it regularly over the past two seasons. So yes, the Bengals were my preseason pick to get the Super Bowl along with the Cowboys. And I'm feeling really comfortable now that they have won 4 in a row and 4 in a row in 5 of their past 6.
I was on HQ on Friday night and was asked like one of the questions, like who would be your Super Bowl pick right now? And I said the Bengals, and it's like, they were your Super Bowl pick before the season, Breech. So it's like, I mean, what kind of what kind of person are you to pick your team to win the Super Bowl? Like, just begging for it to backfire in your face, especially after you had the Broncos the year before that. No big deal. But yeah, like I think the thing with the Bengals, and the question is, I mean, are they like, you almost wish the Super Bowl, like the playoffs were starting like next week, right? Like this, it feels like the Bengals are starting to really hit their stride in a way that like you kind of wish it was December instead of November. just because it'd be later in the season, you'd be closer to the postseason. Burrow's starting to get going. But yeah, I mean, like there's still things they can work out. T. Higgins looks awesome. He's back in full health now. Burrow's just completely healthy. And it's wild to me that when you look at the Bengals and you start to talk about like where they were. And by the way, I think they're still in the basement in the AFC North. But they were 1-3 on October 1st after losing to the Tennessee Titans 27-3. That lone win was that Monday Night Football squeaker over the Rams. And then since then, Burrow, guts it out against the Cardinals. Looks really healthy against the Seahawks, gets in the bye, and then beat the 49ers on the road, the Bills at home. Like, I mean, the idea that at 1-3, looking at their schedule, that they could have possibly been at 5-3 at this point. I mean, I feel like it's like the total opposite of the Cowboys 5-3. You feel like everything is like starting to turn around and going the right direction, and you would be shocked at this point if the Bengals didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing because you mentioned it, Brinson. You said the Bengals are still in last place. They, in fact, are in last place with the 5-3 record below Wilson's Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the first time since divisional realignment in 2002 that any division has had all of its teams at least 2 games over 500 after week 9. And also, as of today, going into the Monday night game, all 4 AFC North teams would currently be in the playoffs. The Bengals at 7, the Browns at 6, Steelers at 5, the Ravens at 2.
Yeah, it's crazy that the realignment, the addition of the playoff game means that an entire division can get into the playoffs. I will go out on a very thick limb and say that the Bengals will not finish last in that division.
Hey, Wilson, did you watch College Game Day at all on Saturday?
No, I usually watch big noon kickoff.
All right. Well, I just have Robbie likes the College Game Day theme song, but and hates Brady Quinn. But they had some Alabama fan was front and center for the entire 3 hours of that show with a gigantic Fire Matt Canada sign.
Alabama fan, that's hardcore.
I know, right?
Oh, he was at Alabama for a minute too. I think they must have some lingering issues. I think my buddy from Alabama mentioned that. Maybe in like he was at
LSU.
All right, moving on. Enough talk about Canada Breech, unless you're moving there.
Maybe.
Wouldn't surprise me.
The Bengals will make the playoffs.
CJ Stroud not only had the best game by rookie quarterback. I saw somewhere that he might be a top 15 quarterback. He was a top 15 quarterback coming into this game. This dude went absolutely crazy. This game was so much fun to watch. I didn't know what to make of the Buccaneers. I thought the Texans were better than they were last week when they lost to the Carolina Panthers. This game ended in completely crazy fashion. Shout out to Baker Mayfield for that fantastic throw down the seam to Cade Otton to put them up. But you can't leave CJ Stroud 46 seconds. He drove down the field, hit Tank Dell on a huge bomb down the left side, then threw a post pattern to Tank Dell in the end zone to get the win there. Fun. The kicker got hurt, Breech, so Dare Ogunbowale had to kick off, and he actually kicked a field goal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit because I know that was probably the highlight of your weekend, even more so than
my year.
What
the Bengals did. So, Brinson, I'll ask you, what are we to make of this CJ Stroud thing? Because it's been fun to watch throughout, but this took things to another level. 30-42, 470 yards, 5 touchdowns. Of course, no interceptions because he refuses to throw interceptions. And look, Tank Dell's there, dude. Dalton Schultz is getting more involved. But Noah Brown, formerly of the Cowboys, now healthy, 6 catches, 153. They are hitting all cylinders in a division where the Jaguars are the best team. But, I mean, look, they're going to make a push. If you're going to ask me who's better, this team or the Steelers, who are 5-3, they beat the Steelers. It's not even close. They're going to beat the Steelers 7.5 times out of 10, in my opinion.
16 catches, 283 yards, and 2 touchdowns from former Cowboys signed by the Texans in free agency between Noah Brown and Dalton Schultz in this game. So I think that speaks to kind of what Houston's done in turn. And don't want to get too deep into the comparison because I know we're going to talk about Frank Reich and the Colts and the Panthers and the Colts later. But man, if you don't think that the Panthers, like the text threads like that I'm on with my friends who are Panthers fans, weren't pointing out the direct juxtaposition of Bryce Young with multiple pick sixes and CJ Stroud breaking the rookie record for passing yards while throwing 5 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Well, it's kind of hard to ignore. And I think part of it, you look at the players around him, like Noah Brown, Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz all had over 100 yards. They obviously won somebody $1 million on DraftKings. The offensive line for the Texans is like a plus. It is, even with all the injuries that they've dealt with. And CJ Stroud is just playing incredible football. Every week it looks like he's playing Georgia in the college football playoff, and he's like putting the Texans on his back and trying to win these games. Was it Brown, or it was Noah Brown in the right corner of the end zone, right? That he hit on that, or was it Tank Dell? Whatever, the one throw we had where he's like sort of like rolls out right a little bit and then like is like kind of pumps a touch and then just cuts it loose into the tiniest window. I mean, you were watching it live and just like, holy hell, what a throw. It's beyond impressive. And I didn't love CJ Stroud coming out, and that was wrong.
That was what?
Wrong. Very
wrong. Yeah. No,
well, I feel like a lot of people were remember the S2 scores? Everyone piled on CJ Stroud trying to get him to drop, and then boom, now he's just crushing.
Oh yeah. By the way, bad. Yeah. My buddy Newman pointed out to me. He's like, somebody needs to talk to them about the S2 scores. Remember, Bryce Young like broke the record for the S2 score, and CJ
S2
Stroud
system apparently doesn't work.
Yeah, not great.
So a couple things about the S2 score. Teams knew about that, as soon as the score was taken, which was back in late January. So that wasn't a surprise. The fact that it came out was incredibly annoying. The other thing, and Rick Spillman's talked about this on the draft podcast, is that, and I've talked to scouts that have told me the same thing. You don't know when he took the test. It could have been after a long day of working out, going to interviews, having dinner, whatever. It could be any number of things. So it doesn't necessarily indicate anything. And also, like a bad score, like under ideal conditions, apparently is more indicative of what future holds than a good score. So the fact that Bryce got 100 on his test may not mean much in this regard. The other thing I'll mention, I've talked about this before, but just so we're clear, Texans were going to take Bryce Young at 2 if he were there. So they got bailed out by everyone thought, myself included, was Bryce Young being the best quarterback. He is having some struggles, and it is not fun to watch. Hopefully he gets better, because I like Bryce, but ooh, Lord have mercy. But shout out to CJ, man. That's been fun to watch. Good for him. And you talk about the playmakers, like CJ's lifting these dudes. Like Nico Collins was just a dude before CJ showed up. Dalton Schultz was good, but he struggled early on just as they were trying to figure each other out. But that's certainly come along. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that Baker Mayfield actually is still, like, he finds ways to be competitive. I give him credit for playing as well as he did in that game. They should have won.
I just want to say real quick that I literally spent the entire second half thinking in my head, how did this team only score 13 points against the Panthers last week? Right? And the fact that Stroud, I mean, he did most of this in the second half, 325 yards, 4 touchdowns just in the second half alone. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And I mean, man, if you're the Panthers, just how do you feel right now watching CJ Stroud dice people up when your QB's out there throwing multiple pick sixes and one?
Allegedly, like, I don't know that how much of it is true, but like Frank, there's all the rumors that Frank Reich and that coaching staff loves CJ Stroud, and then Tepper and maybe Tepper's wife jumped in on it. And on the playmakers, just really quickly, like, I guess what I'm saying is not so much that like Nico and Dalton Schultz and Tank Dell and Noah Brown are like incredible playmakers. Just that it's all like guys under 30 who have a chance to beat you downfield, who can make some plays for you. Whereas like with the Panthers, it's Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, and Hayden Hurst. It's a much dustier group of guys surrounding Bryce Young, plus a terrible offensive line. All
right, Donka for that. Guten Tag for.
Wait, yes or no? Do the Texans make the playoffs?
Yes.
What?
I'm all in on CJ.
Actually.
No, you already said yes, Brinson. It's over.
Yeah, you only get one.
There was no actuallys involved. It was yes or no.
Yeah, Oscar. All right. Going overseas, going to Germany.
Oh, boy.
Frankfurt, home of the Frankfurter Breech. In case you
tell
didn't know that.
Harry to put on his earmuffs.
Yeah.
How do you say Harry tears in German?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I have to Google that.
You have to ask the ref who was calling penalties in German.
Yeah, he just did the first one, and then he gave up. I feel bad for producer Harry. He had to get up early.
How many penalties did he have to learn, though? Like, was that the plan, to just call the first one in German? Did he have to know all of them? Because you don't know what the first penalty is going to be.
Was it a false start?
Unless the game's fixed, Breech, which is a whole nother conversation. All right, Let's get to that. I don't want to talk about how much German the referee does.
What
What I
That's
do
my
want to
favorite
say is that the Dolphins, by the way, and this is producer Harry's headline. It's Dolphins fans. Dolphins cannot be trusted in big games, and I think that's fair because, as Breech, you noted earlier, they seem to falter against teams with winning records. First half, they were still on the plane. They weren't even on the bus from the plane to the stadium. And Breech, I'm just going to, on second down, I went back and looked at this because I was curious. Second down in the first half, this is what the Dolphins did on all their plays where they scored 0 points at halftime. And second and 10 on their first drive, 0 yards. Second and 4, they did get 12 yards. Then after that, second and 10, 0. Second and 9, 0. Second and 10, 0. Second and 7, -7. And then second and 5, 0. And that's how you get 0 points. You go to third down, and then you have third and long is my point. And then you get 0 points in the half. They look better in the second half. And then producer Harry mentioned this briefly when Brinson and I chatted with him earlier this evening. Last drive of the game, Cedric Wilson and Tua seemed to be on different pages because Tua threw back shoulder and Cedric kept running. And then the snap, which I'm not convinced is entirely Tua's fault, but doesn't matter. The snap was botched and the game was virtually over at that point. Breech, can the Dolphins be trusted? Or are you with producer Harry that they cannot be trusted and this is not a team that is among the upper echelon Bengals type teams in the AFC, if you will?
I am going to have to be with producer Harry and say they cannot be trusted. I don't know if you guys remember, we did a power rankings podcast like 2 weeks ago about which playoff contender we trust, which top tier contender we trust the least. And mine was the Dolphins, just because we have not seen them win a big game. And I'll feel a lot better about them once they win a big game. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the graphic. If you're listening to audio, the Dolphins are now 0-3 against teams with a winning record. They have scored 17 points per game in those 3 games. When they play teams with a losing record, they are 6-0, and they're averaging 39 points per game. So that's a 22-point difference. That is substantial. That says when the competition goes up, the Dolphins go down. They do not respond very well to the tougher competition. You know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, not the Dolphins. Dolphins are the opposite of that phrase. So I would definitely be a little bit concerned if I'm a Dolphins fan just for the playoffs, though. But if you look at their schedule, because they have a bye in week 10, but they come out and they play the Raiders, the Jets, the Commanders, the Titans. I mean, if they beat up on losing teams, which is what they've done this year, they're going to feel pretty comfortable for pretty much the rest of the season until they get to late December. So I don't think it becomes a concern until the playoffs. But, man, it's absolutely a concern.
Brinson, before you go, let me ask you this question. Christmas Eve, 2023, week 16. Let's say it's in Birmingham, Alabama, neutral site.
Cowboys, Dolphins.
Dallas Dolphins. Who you taking? It's in Birmingham, Alabama.
Do the Cowboys have a winning record?
They both teams get transported from today to December 24th. So they have the records they have right now.
I was just looking at that, and I mean, look, the Dolphins are still 6-3, 4-2 in the conference. I'm probably taking the Cowboys though. They like the Dolphins. I mean, you got to beat somebody. You know, like you look at and their odds to like they're making the playoffs. You know, that's not. I don't think that's like a concern at all, right? I mean, they are. I believe.
While you look that up, Brinson, let me remind you. I know why Breech is going the angle he's going with this Dolphins team as I look at his bold predictions from August. Breech, Miami finishes last in the AFC East, so he's leaning into that.
With a 9-8 record.
I don't think so.
But they're not finishing in last. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, they would have to. Everyone would have to get hurt for them to finish below the New England Patriots. They're -800 to make the playoffs, so that's not a concern. I am hoping that this has been updated since the end of it hadn't. So there's no odds for the AFC East. I mean, I think Miami's still the favorite to win the division, right? Like
I was going to ask me a follow up. Who do you like better, them or the Bills?
The Bills are so banged up on defense and just haven't looked right the last few weeks. And I would probably take the Dolphins because, as Breech notes, that the schedule is. I mean, look, you get your bye after the trip to Germany. You're gonna Raiders, Jets, Commanders, Titans, Jets. I feel like 3-2 there would be an absolute disaster, right? Like 4-1 feels like a really good bet unless somebody gets hurt. Then Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills. So I feel like worst case scenario, Miami is going to get at end up at 10-7. Like absolute worst case scenario, Miami is 10-7, and with the way Buffalo's playing, I think that that's a possibility to win the division, or maybe the Jets could steal. The
I was going to
division.
say, look at you guys sleeping on the Jets. The Bills aren't even in second place right now. The Jets are.
Right.
They'd only be a half game out of first if they win on Monday night against the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean,
There's no way the Chargers losing that game, Breech.
Oh.
My Super Bowl pick. Jeez, pizza. All right, let me ask either one of you this. I don't care who answers because maybe producer Harry needs to weigh in. How do you fix an outfit that's 1-7 in the last 2 seasons versus teams with top 6 records in the NFL?
I don't know. I would actually like to hear what Harry has to say about the Dolphins.
Harry, are you disposed?
Reveal yourself, Harold.
I'm here.
Harold.
All right, disgruntled and beleaguered Dolphins fan. How do you fix this?
I think a lot of it goes to play calling. I think last year in the playoffs, the Dolphins had the Bills beat in Buffalo, and with a third-string quarterback rookie who was drafted in the 7th round. And the reason they lost that game is because they could not get the plays into the quarterback fast enough, and he needed that time because he was a rookie drafted in the 7th round. Tua doesn't need that much time, but he does need to, I don't know, have enough time to be able to do all the motion he needs to get going and feel comfortable taking a snap that's not directly on center. Connor Williams is a great center, but he's good for at least one bad snap a game. And that was the worst possible time for it.
Sure
but
was.
it was something that was in theory catchable. I just think if you notice, if you go back and watch that play, Tua is in the middle of gesturing when the snap starts. And he has to move his hands over to the side. He can't do it. So I think it's up to Mike McDaniel. As much as I do love him and think he's an amazing coach and a great play caller and an offensive genius, he needs to put his players in a better position to make those plays. And sometimes that might be dialing it back on how complicated they are in order to run a more simple offense, but stuff that you can still definitely do with the players we have, like, I don't know, a slant route. You like get that play in the playbook and make sure you can call it and get it done instantly.
I think the good news is that we're not talking about Tua being a problem because Tua is not the problem. Running game got going, Raheem Mostert. That's encouraging. And finally, I'll just say this. I will send you not 4, not 5. I will send you 6 Steelers first-round picks and Matt Canada. And that's it. That'll be your new play caller if you want to change play callers. I don't want anything in return, but that's the offer that that's on the table.
You know that like Matt Canada is like a negative first-round pick, so it's like you're only sending me like 4.
Well, he's in order to get rid of Matt Canada, he's attaching 6 first-round picks.
Correct. It's the Brock Osweiler deal.
Just the 7th, he's tanking, he's dumping Canada. It's just the 7th time in Tyreek Hill's career where he's had 10 targets and averaged less than 8 yards per reception, which I think is notable. Kansas City's defense did an awesome job bottling up a guy who is hell-bent on making them pay for the trade to Miami. It looks like, I guess, the Chiefs won the trade now, Harry.
Right.
You mentioned
it wasn't the Super Bowl, though. That wasn't it.
Right. The Super Bowl they didn't win the trade for him. You mentioned something before you were talking to me and Wilson about like the noise being a factor.
Yeah. So another thing is the play right before the fumble, which is, and there's a bunch of other, like any football game, there's a bunch of plays that could have happened way before this that we could be talking about. But these were the last 2 that everybody saw, where Tua just miscommunicated with Wilson, and not this Wilson, the player on our team, Wilson, and
the younger one,
basically missed a wide open throw to the end zone. He was trying to audible, and Wilson didn't hear him. And so crowd noise is a big thing with Miami. When you get the plays in late, when you get them and they're complicated, when they're routes that need to be discussed over across the line, you can't do that in hostile environments. It was a huge Chiefs majority
really loud in Germany too,
weirdly, and so not only are the 3 losses to winning record teams, but they're all 3 losses away loud.
Well, and that matters because you've now lost to the Chiefs and you've lost to the Bills, and it's this loss makes it really what makes it much less likely that the Dolphins will go get the 1 seed in the AFC because they don't have that tiebreaker of the Chiefs. And by the way, we were remiss to point out, Wilson, I'm sorry if you're going to do this anyway, but the Chiefs won by a touchdown, and they scored a touchdown on defense after forcing a Tyreek Hill fumble and then pulling off what might be the play of the year on a lateral that ended up being like an Ed Reed style, like hyper aggressive lateral that went the other way.
Yeah, that was fun. Brian Cook, shout out to him. I was thinking, while he was high stepping it down the sidelines like Deion Sanders, I didn't go back and check, but I don't think he ran like in the 4.4s of the combine. He was running 4.4 as he was running away from Tyreek Hill. And again, my thought on that play was, after just acknowledging that was fantastic, was that that's not on Tua. Like, we've had conversations for several years about, okay, Tua can't do this. Tua takes hits. Tua's sliding now. So I think those are all good signs. The defense, I thought, held up pretty well against Patrick Mahomes, who played much better when he wasn't under the weather. But I'm sure none of that makes Producer Harry feel better, but could be worse. Could be worse.
I mean, yeah, it could be. But
could be a
like,
Giants
you know, the best part is I get to stew in it because it's the Dolphins bye week, so I don't even get to like fix it next week. I just have to live with this loss for another week. While I'm on, can I toss a break?
Yeah, go for it. Love it.
Let's go. All right. We're going to go take a quick break. When we come back, we got Lamar Jackson and the Ravens playing down to their opponents, or in this case, up to their opponents. And we have Josh Dobbs' heroic Vikings victory. All that when we come back.
Well, you need your sports news anywhere?
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
All right, Brinson. He's dressed up as a chair if you're watching us on YouTube.
Like when Belichick's dog was calling draft picks.
Yeah, Nike or Sprint or something. Wasn't that his name? All right, Breech,
Nike.
I'll come to you while Brinson puts his hairpiece back on. Baltimore Ravens, best team in the division?
Best
And-
team in the division or the entire conference?
And let me finish the follow
NFL.
up that rhetorical by noting that Eugene Cyril Smith III will now be known as Gino until further notice, because it wasn't entirely his fault, but that team did not show up in Baltimore. And as producer Harry notes, did Lamar Jackson and the Ravens play to their opponent's level, or have they turned a corner much the same way the Bengals have?
I would say, I mean, I was thinking 2 weeks ago when they beat the Lions 38-6, it was like, holy crap, they're good. But not just that, there's also the element of, was this a fluke? But I think because they also beat the Seahawks, there are no flukes. The Ravens are good. I think they look like the best team in the AFC through 9 weeks. But as we're
conference
in the entire conference,
wow, okay,
just they're beating people up. The Lions are a good team. The Seahawks are a good team. The Cardinals game last week, I don't think the score was indicative of how close it was not, even though the Ravens only won by a touchdown. But I mean, this game was utter domination. And maybe it's because Lamar Jackson is 18-1 against NFC teams, but he didn't even play a huge role. I mean, obviously he's Lamar Jackson and he did a lot, but he threw for under 200 yards. He ran when he had to. But the thing about the Ravens is that they find new weapons every week. I mean, when they start using running backs I've never heard of, Keaton Mitchell going off for nearly 140 rushing yards.
Shout out East Carolina.
ECU Pirate, baby.
ECU Pirates. But that's what the Ravens do to you, is just that there's so many guys. And then their defense. I mean, I feel like when you talk about AFC North defenses, it's just the Browns steal all the headlines. But the Ravens are so good on defense. The Seahawks could not do anything. I mean, anything. They had under 100 yards in the first half, converted, I think, 1 third down. It was just brutal. And it wasn't because they were struggling, just because Baltimore would not let them do anything. So this was a little crazy.
Let me follow quickly on Breech's note on the defense, and then Brinson, you can go off. I'm looking at the pressure rate for quarterbacks in Week 9. At the top of the list, Seattle Seahawks. They got pressured on 54.5% of their dropbacks, tied with the Tennessee Titans. And the Ravens were pressured near the bottom, 22nd. They were only pressured on 1/5 of their dropbacks, just a little over 20%.
So the Ravens are just the third team since the merger in 1970 to win 3 straight games against teams who entered the matchup with a winning record by 24 points or more. One of those 3 teams, by the way, were the 2023 Buffalo Bills. Yes, that's right. This year's Buffalo Bills team. The catch with the Buffalo Bills in this particular case, though, is that they did it in the 3 games happened in the first 4 weeks of the season. So, like, the teams they played were either like 2-0 or 1-0. Like the Raiders counted because they were 1-0 or something like that. Not so with the Ravens. Week 4 at the Browns, they win by 25 against granted, not a great quarterback situation, but a dominant defense. And then, to me, and Breech pointed out, the matchups at home against the Lions and then the Seahawks. And I know that Lamar Jackson beats the crap out of the NFC, 18-1, the best record by any quarterback against the other conference.
Undefeated at home.
Undefeated at home. But the Lions and the Seahawks both came in amidst a heavy doling out of the proverbial flowers to those teams. People were like, the Seahawks are legit and the Lions are legit. And they both got absolutely smoked by the Ravens. And I think what's really, really notable to me is that this offseason, after sort of stagnating, definitely stagnating, the Ravens went out and made changes. And they brought in, Todd Monken, who's Lamar Jackson's completing over 70% of his passes. Like, it's a wholesale, total change in terms of this offense. It's more balanced. It's not leaning on Lamar Jackson's rushing ability. It allows him to run, but doesn't force him to run. It spreads the ball around more. Odell Beckham scored his first touchdown since Breech was at the Super Bowl watching the Bengals lose to my Rams. Unnecessary, but fair. And then Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator, is getting the absolute most out of this Ravens defense. I think credit to John Harbaugh for. He's done this before. He did this when they drafted Lamar Jackson. He adjusted his wholesale adjustments and sort of reconfigured his team. And now that has the Ravens rolling. And I think, like, more so than even Lamar's MVP year, this Ravens team, the way that they're playing and the way that Lamar's playing, it feels like they have a legitimate chance to kind of make a deep run in the playoffs.
So Geno Smith, I'm looking at True Media, his expected points added for week 9. How much value he added to play points wise, minus a half a point over the entire course of of Sunday's action. The only other quarterback worse than that was not Bryce Young. It was Clayton Tune, who had an absolutely disastrous performance against a Browns defense that was eager to embarrass a young rookie quarterback who probably didn't want to be out there. So again, both of you guys have talked about it. The defense has been stepping up because the last few years it's been hard to find edge rushers on that team, and it feels like Odafe Owe is coming around. That's encouraging. Michael Pierce is dominating in the middle of that defense. Kyle Hamilton had a chance.
Kyle Van Noy had a strip sack.
Kyle Van Noy, I think he has like 4 or 5 sacks this season, which is fantastic. So yeah, they're getting after it. All right.
And real quick, the Ravens have outscored their opponents by 115 points this year. No other team has even outscored their opponents by more than 80. So they're just way up there.
Yeah, but Brinson, are they aeronautical engineers or space cadets? Or that's what Josh Dobbs is.
Oh, right. I was like, is that how Matt Canada got his magic beans or something?
He's a rocket surgeon, as someone noted on, which is a pretty good thing for Josh Dobbs. So Josh Dobbs got traded on the trade deadline. Sorry, we're boring you, Breech, with this Josh Dobbs story. It's a fantastic story if you want to listen up. Breech is yawning if you're listening to the podcast, as he often does when I try to talk to him about important
time change. It's like 2:00 in the morning on my
important
body.
life lessons.
Dude, it's brutal.
Josh Dobbs in Arizona on Tuesday shows up 5 days before he's going to hold the clipboard on the sidelines for the Vikings. Jaron Hall scrambles to try to get into the end zone, gets knocked in the head, has a concussion, has to leave after less than a quarter of action. In comes Josh Dobbs, immediately gets a safety. You're like, okay, it's going to be one of those days. This is going to be a get-right game for Heineke and Arthur Smith's mustache. Someone forgot to tell Josh Dobbs because that dude went off. And he's a smart guy, but I don't know. You could be the smartest person on planet Earth. I don't know if Tom Brady plus Peyton Manning plus Drew Brees are coming in and learning that offense and doing what he was able to do, Josh Dobbs, in part because he's incredibly athletic. He was the leading rusher, had 66 yards and more running yards than Bijan Robinson, but also Brinson, 20 of 30 for 158 and 2 touchdowns. It was absolutely crazy to the point that I think and producer Harry agrees, Vikings can still make the playoffs.
And by the way, this is my favorite thing about the whole Josh Dobbs story. This is Kevin Seifert of ESPN reporting from the game. Incredible. So I'm just going to read these three tweets that he had in a row. Incredible stories from the Vikings locker room today. Josh Dobbs didn't take a single rep with the offense in practice. No snaps from Garrett Bradbury. Had never thrown passes to anyone and didn't know most of their full names. That's for next week, Dobbs said. When it was time for Dobbs to come to the game, the Vikings offense huddled on the sideline and went through the team's 5 primary cadences, said right tackle Brian O'Neill. That was the first time he had gone through it with the rest of the offense. Josh Dobbs said he was not afraid to tell people what he didn't know today. Per receiver Jordan Addison, that meant coming to the huddle and saying things like, okay, what do I have on this side or to this, on this side, said Addison. And we were telling him, everyone was letting him know. This dude didn't know anyone's names. He's like, hey, 14 or hey, 3, what's going on the right side of the offense on this play? And Addison's telling him. And like, again, as you point out, Wilson, this guy's a really, really smart dude. Went to Tennessee, got this great degree in aeronautical engineering. And like, he's on his 5th NFL team in the last calendar year.
Sounds about right.
2 years, I think.
5th NFL team in 2 years. Okay, yeah. I mean, he started games for the Cardinals, the Steelers last year, obviously, and then now the Vikings. I mean,
Titans. He started the playoff game for Malik Willis.
Yeah, I meant to say Titans. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, he started 2 games for the Titans, I believe, or at least came in and then started the.
He's on his 5th team in the last 11 months. He was on the Lions.
11 months.
Lions practice squad last December. Then he got signed to the Titans active roster. Then ended up with the Browns. Then got traded to Arizona, and then now Minnesota.
Crazy, and it's and now like it's worth remembering that Baker Mayfield did something similar when he signed with the Rams after the Panthers released him when they decided to last year, and then and also play for the Browns too, but. Like it didn't hold up. And now I'm not saying Dobbs can't keep it up. I just think like, let's enjoy this for what it is, which is a guy getting traded to this team on Tuesday and being forced into action on Sunday and not knowing anybody's name or knowing any of the plays or knowing what the hell was going on out there and pulling out this crazy win over a Falcons team that just you have no idea what the Falcons are going to do week to week.
Well, and let me throw out real quick because Ryan actually understated, if that's even possible, how bad Dobbs was to start this game. Not only did he go in there and get safetied almost immediately, but if you look at his first 4 possessions, not including a kneel down right before halftime, there was a safety, a lost fumble, and another lost fumble. So 3 of the first 4 possessions were literally worst case scenario. And the Falcons still lost. This was the most falconing the Falcons have ever falconed because losing to this guy who, as you guys said, he's been on the roster since Tuesday, didn't take a practice rep, turned the ball over twice, got safetied, and you still can't win if you're the Falcons. I mean, this is probably the most embarrassing loss the Falcons have had in, I would say, years, but
I think
they have so many embarrassing losses, it's tough to rank them all.
Yeah, this is not a good look, except for anyone maybe Des Ridder being the only one who has a chance to redeem himself when he gets.
But does he? I mean, the Falcons put up 28 points. It was the defense that couldn't stop Super Josh Dobbs.
Taylor Heineke wasn't exactly setting the world.
I mean,
on fire.
he wasn't great.
You're up 21. You're up 21-13 with like 7 minutes to go in the third quarter.
They got Dobbs.
They got Dobbs.
All right, got to move on to a. I don't want to call it an embarrassing performance for the Giants because Breech, I'll come to you because. It looks like Daniel Jones probably tore his ACL. We'll find out for sure on Monday, but those are the rumors flying around the Twitter sphere. I don't know. Brinson, you can tell us what the revenge game angle is for Antonio Pierce. But I'll just start with this. So Jay Glazer went on Fox pregame show.
It's wild.
And said they had a come to Jesus meeting last week. The Raiders did because Josh McDaniels was losing the team. And all the players get up and speak their piece. And as you might imagine, it probably wasn't a lot of fun to hear. On behalf of the coaching staff, Josh McDaniel asked Antonio Pierce, the interim head coach, to stand up and speak. Antonio Pierce had a great career for the Giants as a linebacker forever. He gets up and speak, and he said one of the things that sort of drove that 2007 Giants team that beat the Patriots, who were undefeated at the time of the Super Bowl, was that no one was going to outclass us when we got on the field. We were going to go out there and kick whoever's ass was in our way, and that's how they got through that season. And, he sat down and, probably checked his phone to see how things were going, and then gets a tap on his shoulder metaphorically, and Josh McDaniels says, don't ever talk that way about the Patriots. Like, that was Josh Daniels' takeaway from a come to Jesus meeting about saving the season. Now, he may have thought that his job was safe because Mark Davis handpicked him. Mark Davis later said that about both Gruden and McDaniels, maybe he should quit having a predetermined coach in mind. But Breech, I'll ask you, this victory was insanely huge for the Raiders because they were playing looser and freer. Does it mean anything for the rest of the season, number one? And then either you can or we can let Brinson follow up on the sort of other side, Daniel Jones drama, what it means for their quarterback situation, short and long term.
I do think it means something for the Raiders because this isn't just like this is a team that was 2-12 and fired their coach, and I hope they could end the season on a high note. This team is 4-5. They could fight for an AFC wildcard playoff berth. It's not out of the question. I mean, granted, they're like a game and a half. Yeah, whatever. But they're not there yet. I think they're the 12th seed in the AFC, so they still have some work to do. But when you look at how motivated this team was, this team had the deck stacked against them going into this game. Because let's just point all of this stuff out. They played last Monday, so they were going into this game on a short week. They fired their coach. They were starting a rookie quarterback. So if any team had any reason to lose this week, it was absolutely the Raiders. And they came out and they just win.
A rookie quarterback in Aiden O'Connell who got sacked 47 times against the Chargers and got benched so they could bring back Jimmy Garoppolo, and Brian Hoyer had to play for a little bit. Go ahead.
And also Josh McDaniels decided to start Brian Hoyer over Aiden O'Connell, which is just another mind-boggling decision.
When his boss wanted him to start Aiden O'Connell.
It is, it's crazy. And so this just tells me that maybe the Raiders can be good with a better coach. They found, if not a better like X and O's coach, a more motivating coach, which seems like what this team needed. I mean, Josh McDaniels, just these stories that came out on Sunday just comes across as kind of smug and arrogant that his way works. That what?
I thought you were going to say stupid when the S came out of your mouth.
No, I'm not that mean, but just that it's his way is going to work and we're never going to veer off it. And I'm never going to change and I'm going to make this work. And the Raiders are going to win my way or they won't win. But when you look at the Raiders, like the Raiders play the Jets next week, that's a winnable game. But I would say that you're at least feel good that you could compete for a wild card spot. And I think with the way the season's gone and you're a Raiders fan, if you're at least in the conversation going into December, you're probably happy, right, Prince?
So just of note, I think like I couldn't stop thinking about Seinfeld with the Glazer report, because he actually said it wasn't so much like a come to Jesus meeting. It was an airing of the grievances. In other words, everyone called this meeting to complain and yell about Josh McDaniels to Josh McDaniels. Additionally, it was reported either by Mike Florio, is it Florio, Rap Sheet, or Glazer? And I can't remember which, because there's just so much McDaniel stuff coming out today, that Mark Davis has been having private meetings, like dinners and stuff, with Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams and other players. And we're all passing along this information about, like, dude, this McDaniel sucks. This is horrible. The building is completely divided. And it all was abundantly clear after this beatdown when the locker room was having a Vegas-style smoke session, just an absolute glee party at Josh McDaniel's expense after the win.
That's a double, Al. Let us talk to the people. That's a Raider dub. Stop playing.
That was Max Crosby's Instagram live, by the way. He goes live on like it looks like a casino in that locker room, just absolutely completely smoked out. Josh Jacobs ran the ball really well. Devontae Adams didn't look mad that Jacoby Myers was getting plenty of attention. Aiden O'Connell. I mean, the Giants are a terrible football team, but this was not the revenge game, actually, Wilson. The angle here is that this is the dead cat bounce game, where you fire the coach and then you have the bounce back. As for Daniel Jones, could they have gotten out of his contract after 1 year? I don't think they were going to do it anyway, but they can't now because he ain't going to pass physical because he tore his ACL. And man, the Giants' playoff victory over the Minnesota Vikings from last year feels a lot more like 150 years ago than it does like 9 months.
Yeah, not great for Daniel Jones. He just come back from a neck injury, I believe. He hadn't played for a couple weeks. Tyrod Taylor was out because he got hurt with a rib injury, I believe. Tommy DeVito had to play. And I'll just tease this into the break, Breech. If you want Caleb Williams to be your quarterback next year, and no disrespect to Tommy DeVito, start Tommy DeVito for the rest of the year. That's all I'm going to say about that. And we'll talk about some other young quarterbacks who had some ups and mostly downs in week 9 right after this.
An NWSL semifinal Sunday you'll never forget, with an icon leading the Shield winners against a legend who's hanging up her boots, and a budding star looking for back-to-back championships against a squad determined to give their captain a grand finale. All on CBS Sports Network.
All right, we're at the point in the process just past the midway point of the NFL season where backup quarterbacks are rampant. Feels like more so this year than in previous years. But Brinson, I'll have you rank these backup quarterbacks. 3 rookies, 1 quote-unquote veteran, and how you want them to start your football team. Tyson Bagent, who I think made his 3rd start, he hung in there, but that team had 5 freaking turnovers. He had 3 of them. And their loss to the Saints. David Carr.
It's 5 guys. I'll go 5 for Tyler Bagent. Tyson Bagent.
Hold on. Brett Rippon.
Oh, no, Tommy DeVito's last. Sorry.
Clayton Tune.
Oh, boy.
Clayton Tune got sacked 457. Is that right? Against the Browns went off on him, and then Tommy DeVito. I mean, it was a doo-doo fest, as I might say.
So, all right.
Here, let me set it up for you. So you have to play. You're the Kansas City Chiefs. Who are they playing, Breech? You're playing the Steelers. You're playing Matt Canada and Kenny Pickett. You're the Kansas City Chiefs. Everyone is healthy except for Patrick Mahomes, who is on his 2nd honeymoon. They're redoing their vows. Who do you want to start? Tyson Bagent, Brett Rippon, Clayton Tune, or Tommy DeVito?
I'm going to start Brittany Mahomes.
But she's on the honeymoon. You can't do that.
She was actually with Taylor Swift in New York while the team was in Germany.
Looking at TMZ Brinson over here.
I was just on a Rolling Stone on Instagram actually. Am I still ranking? Am I answering this or is Breech answering this? Sorry,
you're answering. Who you starting for the Kansas City Chiefs? Who's Andy Reid pulling the trigger?
All right, so
on?
wait, my list is it's Tommy DeVito,
Clayton Tune, who struggled mightily, understandably so, against the really good Browns defense. Brett Rippon, who, man, he couldn't mount anything against the Packers. The Packers team that can't score points actually scored a few points. And then Tyson Bagent, who at times looks okay. He's going to throw 3 or 4 interceptions.
I guess the good news is that we only have to see 2 of them. Hopefully only have to see 2 of those guys for the rest of the season. But like, this is Tommy DeVito's team the rest of the way until Tyrod Taylor is able to come back. Clayton Tune, I guess Kyler Murray will be back. Actually, so Kyler will be back maybe next week, which I don't know if you're the Cardinals. Do you really want him to come back? I mean,
yeah, I think so, because you wouldn't have gotten rid of Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, that's true. I'll say Tyson Bagent, but I don't just because
I think that's the right answer.
Yeah, it's not inspiring.
I would say Bagent too.
All right.
Except for the 4 turnovers, the 1 fumble and 3 interceptions, he didn't play horrible.
It sounds crazy when you say that out loud, but that's 100% true. If you watch that game, I think it says more about Derek Carr. Derek Carr did not look good, and maybe that's something to do with not being on the same page with his receivers. But we're 9 weeks into this thing. Tyson Bagent has an excuse. Derek Carr and that crew does not.
You could tell that Derek Carr, like you could always tell when Derek Carr's been talking to the announcers and Derek Carr's family's been talking to the announcers because this announcing crew was like, part of the problem when you're a quarterback on a new team is you've got to meet everybody and you got to figure out where you're going to eat and what your schedule is going to be like. It's like, what? He's just in New Orleans. You don't think he can figure out where to eat?
At Applebee's. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Come on.
Yeah, Chili's. I mean, it's New Orleans.
It is wild though that we've had so many young quarterbacks play. Brett Rippon's not young; he's younger, but I don't know, man.
I think if you run through the NFL standings and like, there's actually like a lot. I think there's more teams that have started their backups at least once this season than there are teams who have not. Right.
I think Joe Burrow's played every snap. I know Kenny's come out for a few snaps in Pittsburgh, but I think we had 7 rookies start this week.
So the Titans, the Vikings, the Falcons,
the Bears,
the Cardinals, the Browns, the Rams,
the Bears,
the Patriots. I guess if you count Bailey Zappi coming in there, the Colts, the Panthers. That's 10 right there. The Giants.
Gardner Minshew's a 1st-round pick, so that's
the Giants, the Raiders. That's 12. And then Buffalo. And I'm trying to think who's on bye this week. But yeah, I think it's you're close to half the league: Broncos, Jaguars, Niners, and Lions. So you're close to half the league that's had to start start a backup in at least one game this season, which is pretty wild in week 9.
So looking at this, Tyson Bagent, the Bears are probably going to draft a quarterback. Clayton Tune, you just talked about Kyler Murray. See how that works out, but they're going to be in the conversation. The Giants are now going to be in the conversation for a quarterback in the offseason because with the ACL, potentially with Daniel Jones, that certainly clouds things up unless you want to roll with Tyrod. I'm laughing because I'll just say this and then we'll move on to Breech's the moment Breech has been waiting for to talk about the Dare
Agumbawale.
Thank you. That
I practiced multiple times before I got on the podcast.
In fact, let's
You know
go
how
on.
I am about
I don't
butchering
need to make fun of Brian Daboll. He's got enough worried about. All right.
By the way, Daniel Jones, you could keep him for next year and then easily cut him. I just have $22 million in dead cap after 2024. So
I think it was a 2-year thing.
That's kind of a done deal if they finish the season with this bad.
All right, Breech. Dare Agumbawale. Boom.
I will go through this just kind of fast. We witnessed one of the greatest things in football history in the Texans win over the Buccaneers, and it wasn't C.J. Stroud breaking the rookie record. It was a freaking running back going into the game and kicking a field goal. This is almost unheard of. I mean, usually when a kicker goes down in the NFL, Kami Fairbairn injured his quad, couldn't play in the second half, and when that happens, the punter is almost always the backup kicker, unless you're in a situation where the punter has no real kicking experience and the team doesn't feel comfortable. So they're like, all right, we're going to send out our running back, who in this case was Agumbawale. And he drilled his 29-yard field goal. They didn't try any extra points. They scored 4 touchdowns in the second half. They said, screw it, we're going to go for 2 every time. We're not going to put him through that. But they did try a 29-yard field goal, which is obviously was big because they only won by 2. And he did make it. And so he was the first non-kicker or punter to make a field goal since 2004.
Wes Welker.
Yeah. And the first running back to make a field goal since 1979. So this is a very rare occurrence we got to witness. I hope everyone savors it. It was amazing. Congratulations.
Breech, will you please hold up the piece of paper where you've written down the pronunciation guide to said running back's last name? Because I saw you glance down to your right as you were saying it. I know you have the pronunciation.
Of course I did. Come on. I said, I'm the guy who said Mathayu.
All right.
But just one quick note on that too. When the Texans scored the final touchdown with 6 seconds left, they were up 2 points. The spread on this game was the Texans -3. The Texans took a knee on a 2-point conversion formation because they did not want to risk a botched extra point and have it return for 2 and tie the game up. And knowing that, with 6 seconds, it was going to be a Hail Mary situation or like a pitchy woo-woo thing, not a field goal attempt. So it wasn't going to cost you either way. So it was really, really smart situational coaching by DeMeco Ryans in that spot.
Yep, for sure. And Breech, I can't believe how you had your moment and you missed the punchline. Agumbawale kicked the 29-yarder midway through the fourth quarter to put them up 33-30. You didn't mention that.
Yes, I mentioned it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't mention that. Put them up 33-30. I said it was 29-yarder that was a key to the game because they only won by 2, and he scored 3 points.
He also kicked off a handful of times. His first kickoff right after halftime, kicked off from the 35-yard line like you typically do. Got it down to the Tampa Bay 4. That's pretty impressive for a guy not wearing kicking shoes and who also isn't a kicker. Kicked up from the 50 after twice because of a couple of sportsmanlike conduct penalties by the other team, and then he put those into the end zone for touchbacks. And then the final kickoff was also a touchback, I believe, as they were set. Yeah, again, it was another one from midfield because of a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So, man, that guy. If I'm CJ Stroud, I'm getting that guy the game ball. I think Dare had a better game than. All right, he didn't. But that's pretty awesome. All right, finally, Brinson, right in your wheelhouse. We'll end on this one because you are the doctor of revenge games around here. Clearly, you did not talk to Frank Reich about revenge games because Bryce Young thought he was playing for the other team for much of the afternoon through 2 pick sixes to Mr. Moore.
I believe that's more pick sixes than he had in his entire career at Alabama.
Well, yeah, we joke about Alabama college teams beating a NFL team. That Alabama team that he was on, They're absolutely destroying this Panthers team. Anyway, Frank Reich revenge game. What do you got?
Panthers couldn't run the football. The Colts last week got absolutely smoked in terms of the deep ball by one Derek Carr, who's not particularly great at throwing the deep ball. He went 19 to 27 for 310 yards and 2 scores. Rashid Shaheed had a 58-yard. This is last week. We had 3 guys, including Alvin Kamara, whose longest catch was over 25 yards. The Carolina Panthers actually had Hayden Hurst with a 48-yard catch. That was really late in the game. Other than that, the longest pass play was 11 yards. It's unbelievable how little the Panthers can do down the field, and to the big kick in the nuts on the revenge game here was Jim Irsay dancing to Meek Mill in the locker room post game while like holding on to Shane Steichen's pinky finger to maintain his balance. I have a really hard time believing that David Tepper won't do something rash at some point if this continues.
Well, all right, I got an idea. Breech, while I read the outro here, why don't you get up in the background, and why don't you hit the gritty like you're Jamar Chase, and you can pretend like you're
That's not
Jim Irsay doing the gritty.
I know what the gritty is. I don't want to do it because I don't want to stand up. I got an earpiece in. It
You
won't
got your
follow
little
me.
cushion on your little boo-boo there. Okay, fair enough. Remember, if you'd like to support us and the show, give us a thumbs up on YouTube and
Do
NFL
VPs
CBS.
or no?
Oh, that's right. Harry was in such a hurry to get out here. All right, Breech VP, what do you got?
Agun Bawale.
All right, Brinson MVP, who you got?
Antonio Pierce, baby. Like he
Oh,
dunks.
that's
You think he didn't know what he was doing when he said that thing about the 07 Giants? Like they
he
beat
set
Josh
him up.
McDaniels' Patriots team. He knew what he was doing.
Fell for it. You fell for it, Josh. Also, again, I can't believe I'm doing this. More credit to Mike McCarthy, who took time off and actually did have some introspection. Josh McDaniels apparently is the same person 10 years later. Whatever. My MVP, Wilson BP, Josh Dobbs. Shout out to Josh Dobbs. All right, that's it, boys. That's a wrap on week 9. Sunday Night Super Friends. Don't worry. You can check out the Pick 6 podcast all week on YouTube, NFL and CBS, or wherever you get your audio podcasts. In the meantime, thanks to all you hung out with us. We appreciate you. For Brinson, for No Gritty and Breech, for producer Harry, I'm Wilson. We'll see you guys next week.